Welcome back, everybody. How's everyone doing today? This is the first ever episode of the Platinum Trophy Online. This is going to be our weekly YouTube online show. We take a look at a very specific topic in gaming each week and kind of break it down with your help, the audience, and we'll have a bit of a discussion about it and sort of deep dive right on into it. Today's episode is really going to be about Game of the Year. How I'm going to start it is the first sort of half of this is going to be really focused on my personal game of the year for 2020, and then I want to talk with all of you guys and figure out, you know, what your game of the year is for 2020, what your favorite games were that came out this year, what games you absolutely love. Once that's done, we will end the stream and I will go away and edit this show. So the way I see this going is the live show will go for 1 hour every week. And then I'll go and edit it, and I'll probably edit it down to about a 20-minute YouTube video. We're going to be loosey-goosey with it. Now, this is the first one we've ever done, so keep that in mind. See how this format evolves over time and how it changes. And I'm sure it will. Okay, so Game of the Year 2020. As a lot of you guys know, and you may have tuned in with me last week and watched the Game Awards, The Last of Us Part 2 won the official Game of the Year 2020 award. And you may agree with that, you may disagree with that. I know a lot of people didn't like the story of The Last of Us. A lot of people didn't like the way they took the direction of that game, the events that happened in the game. We're not going to be talking about things specifically in there because I don't want to spoil The Last of Us Part 2. What I want to do is kind of give this as a bit of an opportunity for you guys to share with me your game of the year and me to share my personal game of the year as well. I think, you know, I think Last of Us is deserving of a Game of the Year award. I don't think that it's unjustified. For me personally, though, it's not actually my Game of the Year. It's probably not even on the top list of my favorite games that came out in 2020. A lot of stuff came out in 2020 that kind of goes under the radar a little bit. I should mention as well, this is specific to PlayStation or PS4. Anyone who's like a long-time viewer of the channel knows that my favorite game of all time is Silent Hill 2. It's just a fantastic open world action survival game, ticking a lot of boxes in terms of stuff I like in video games. Narratively, gameplay wise, aesthetics, it really did a lot for me in terms of my favorite game. So any games that I play are always going to be sort of put through a lens from that perspective. So keep that in mind with, you know, how this conversation goes and how these kind of conversations go around Game of the Year, because obviously the way I view games is all going to be based on what my favorite games were. So Silent Hill 2 being one of those games. The reason I say that is because they're not everyone's favorite games, right? That's a very niche and a very specific type of game that, you know, not everybody digs, not everyone likes. And for 2020, my personal favorite game of the year, and this probably doesn't come as a surprise for anyone who's followed me on Twitch for quite a while now, is Hunt Showdown. Now, Hunt Showdown, pop it up over here. Hunt Showdown is a game that came out on PC a number of years ago, but it only came out on the PlayStation ecosystem in 2020. It came out in, I believe, February of this year. And I guess Hunt Showdown, if people aren't aware of what it is exactly, is it's a single player slash co-op slash multiplayer, I guess kind of PvEVP game. That does a lot of stuff. It did a lot of stuff not so well. There's a lot of stuff that's very unique in there. Yeah, it's a little bit hard to explain. So what I thought I would do, well, actually, let's kind of go over it quickly now, and then we've got a bit of a trailer to show here as well to kind of set a little bit more context around it. But Hunt Showdown, essentially, you play as a bounty hunter. Now, your job is to collect a bounty. The bounties are like animals. You're hunting these creatures. You know, a giant monstrous spider, maybe it's like this big butcher type guy with a pig head, these monstrosity creatures. And the way it works is you get given a bounty and you have to solve clues to find out where the bounty is on this open world map, and then you have to kill the bounty and leave the map with the bounty. Now, once you've done that, you win the round. But the consequence, or the crux of it, is that there are actually other players in the same open world trying to do the same thing as you. So they are trying to also collect the bounty and trying to also kill the bounty the same way that you are, which is where it throws the real spanner in the works. Now, the reason that creates such an exhilarating aspect to it is because it removes the sort of single player nature or that linear nature of a game and just creates infinite possibilities. because a player could decide to hunt just a player and go after another player. They could decide to just go after the bounty and hide from other players. They could decide to wait for someone to collect the bounty, then kill the other players. And it just creates this enormous number of possibilities. On top of that as well, you've also got regular enemies in the world, which are also sort of invading or creeping around in the environment that you have to take out and deal with as well. And they can also sort of count as fodder, and some of those can get particularly strong. That's the general premise of the game. A lot of people here are saying Ghost of Tsushima is their game of the year. I'm seeing quite a few people saying that, as I'm saying Crash Bandicoot 4 and Cuphead. So that's a bit of a sample, I guess, from everybody else. And we'll sort of circle back to Ghost of Tsushima, and we'll talk about those games a little bit shortly as well, because you know, I want to know more about why these particular games were your games of the year as well. The same way I'm sort of going to explain more about why Hunt was my personal game of the year. For those of you who don't watch me on Twitch, you probably don't really know what Hunt is exactly. So what I thought I would do is show a bit of a trailer for the game. This is the trailer that was released on the official PlayStation YouTube channel about Hunt, just to give you guys a vibe of exactly what this is, so you kind of know what I'm talking about when I'm explaining it and when I'm kind of what I'm describing. As you can see, this is Hunt Showdown. This is a first-person Preposaurus Rex type of game. It's a multiplayer game at heart. It can be played single player. It can be played, you know, cooperatively. It can be played in trios. But ultimately, it is a multiplayer game. There's very few instances where you'll encounter, you know, a round where you don't have other players in the world as well. I saw Michael's question before about permadeath, and yeah, the game has permadeath. You can level up your character. He has different traits he can get. He has different items or weapons he can get. But if your character dies in a match, he's dead forever. And you have to start again with a brand new character as well, which obviously makes things even more tense when you're playing. This isn't going to be for everybody, this kind of game. It's obviously not as mainstream as something like a Ghost of Tsushima, Crash Bandicoot, Last of Us Part 2. These kind of games that are, you know, very, very mainstream for all intents and purposes, in terms of trying to get the broadest possible you know, amount of appeal for the audience. But the thing about this was just the sheer level of replayability on a game like this, in my opinion, is really what it's really what set it apart for me in terms of making it something like truly special. Being able to replay a match and have a different outcome based on the players you're up against, the enemies that get spawned into the world, as well as sort of the loadout and the characters you have as well, just really created something, you know, immensely special in my opinion. This game was developed by Crytek as well. It's on the Cry engine, so the game looks beautiful and it doesn't run very well, as you would expect from any sort of Crytek game. They managed to make their worlds just look stunning, but the loading times are truly atrocious. It's one of the massive downfalls of the game is the loading times and the way it runs. I don't think I've ever played a Crytek game run particularly well on PlayStation. Now, on saying that, on the PlayStation 5, this game runs so smooth in comparison to the PlayStation 4. It's almost like the PS4 was just having such a hard time running this game on that hardware. But over on the PS5, the game runs just stunningly. And it's actually almost like it's a completely different experience playing it over on the PlayStation 5 compared to playing it on the PlayStation 4, which is neat. It's actually kind of breathed new life into it for me, especially. A few years ago when I started the channel initially, I really fell in love with Dead by Daylight. And I didn't really talk a huge amount about Dead by Daylight back in the day, but Dead by Daylight became, you know, sort of one of these things I like this that I became, you know, really truly obsessed with. That year, that was easily my game of the year, just based on the amount of fun I had with the game, based on the amount of time I spent in that game, you know, how special they made that world, and I feel like Hunt has really done that. They've taken a pretty simple and basic concept and made it kind of unique. And I think one of the things I like, you know, a lot about these two games is the way that they've adapted and changed horror. Horror traditionally is a sort of scripted piece where you're experiencing exactly what the developers want you to experience. It's a set piece of content. If you think of sort of what Resident Evil 3 obviously had Nemesis as its like kind of horror trope, but it was completely scripted and on rail, and it's sort of good, and it was good back in the day. But now, after seeing the way that Mr. X operates, seeing the way that sort of Mr. X operated in Resident Evil 2, or the way that the Bakers operated in Resident Evil 7, or even the Alien in Alien Isolation operated with this sort of autonomy. It wasn't like a traditionally scripted piece of horror or cinematic. And I think that sort of procedural nature is what made those games, truly special and unique in my personal opinion. Now, I think games like Dead by Daylight or even Hunt Showdown, they take that to another level, because not only is everything kind of procedural and random, on top of that, the other people or the other pawns in the game are players as well, all with the same sort of desires as you. Which means that not only do you have the procedural nature of the horror coming into the game, but you also have that spanner of the other players coming in as well, and you just don't know what they're going to be doing. You might have someone stalking you for 20 or 30 minutes in this game, you're not even aware of it. And I think, I think that's the kind of thing that really makes this game special and unique in my personal opinion. That's what I would say. So the other thing, I think, I don't know if there's much more to say about it apart from that. Those are the main reasons that I sort of really love this game, and I really love this experience, and that's why this is my game of the year for 2020. But I think maybe we'll look at the trophies. That's probably another part. I haven't actually platinumed this game yet. A game that I would love to platinum. It's probably a game that I'll look to platinum in 2021. The platinum trophy here it's very rare. It's 3.41% on PSN profiles, which is a relatively rare platinum trophy, I would say. You've got a total of 38 trophies here: 20 bronze, 13 silvers, 4 golds, and 1 platinum. And I'm not going to go through them all, but what I thought we'd do is at least have a look at this and look at sort of the difficulties and what's going to be kind of required here to platinum this game if I want to go ahead and do it. Which I do still think I will try. So this is a little guide on PSN profiles written by Genosaur, and they're saying it's about a 6 out of 10 difficulty. So it's a pretty decent platinum trophy, requiring one full playthrough and about 150 hours of grinding. The majority of the stuff in here is grindy stuff, but being a multiplayer game, there's always that element of randomness. There's always that element of you just don't know how hard or what exactly is going to be required to get the platinum trophy in it. So it always creates kind of that element of I don't know, and that's why that scale kind of gets pushed out so significantly for a multiplayer game. In terms of who I would recommend this to, it's not for everybody. It's definitely not. It's a game for a very specific kind of person. It's a game for people who enjoy sort of that competitive multiplayer aspect, as well as people who enjoy the horror genre, essentially, and who want to kind of meld those two things together, who are looking to ratchet that level of horror up to something else and to something unique. And I think that's ultimately who I would recommend this game to. So absolutely not for everybody. It's not a super mainstream title, but that's also one of the things I love about it. But that's my personal game of the year. That's my personal game of the year. That's the game I fell in love with in 2020. That's the game I probably spent the most time with in 2020 as well. But I want to hear from all of you guys what your games of the year were. So if you guys want to pop in the chat and let me know now what your personal games of the year were for 2020. I'm going to read through some of these comments that have been missing as we've been chatting and yammering away for about half an hour now. Using your criteria, my game of the year will be Apex Legends. It's what it grabs me the most and have the more fun. Now, games that I played and think deserves a prize: Last of Us Part 2, or Ghost of Tsushima are up there. TPH said he really liked Dead by Daylight, been playing with friends since they got it for free. Oh yeah, nice. It was free on the PlayStation Plus a while back, wasn't it? Raphael says agree with Last of Us Part 2 being Game of the Year 2020, and Ghost of Tsushima deserved it too. Now, yes, this is kind of what I want to talk about a little bit is, Last of Us Part 2, I think got, a lot of very negative criticism. Some justified, some not. I think the game definitely got the shorter end of the stick, and I don't think it deserved kind of all the criticism it got. I think The Last of Us Part 2 was still a very good game. I think, it had problems. It wasn't a masterpiece. Did it have pacing problems? Absolutely it did. Was it too long? Absolutely it was. Were the cinematics good? They were fantastic. They were brilliant. Was the acting good? Absolutely, it was brilliant. Was the story as good as the first? Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on that. But as far as competency on developing a game on the PlayStation 4 ecosystem in 2020. I think it's one of the best examples of a game that came out in 2020. It's a fantastic game, and it did deserve, awards. On that same vein though, Ghost of Tsushima, I think, also did deserve some awards. I think Ghost of Tsushima did some stuff that was, that was very, very good. Especially from a developer like Sucker Punch, developing this enormous open world that is so much bigger than anything they've ever done before. A new combat system, having, cinematics transitioning to gameplay, which is something that they haven't traditionally done before. Having this sprawling narrative with side quests and content. But then not only that, that's just the single player component. Then they added a completely separate multiplayer component to that game, which I think is the real game changer. That's where they went from producing a really good, solid AAA action game, an amazing package, because the multiplayer was good. It wasn't bad. It was unique. It wasn't tacked on. It was thoughtful. It was well developed. And they didn't even release it at launch because obviously they wanted to make sure it was good enough to justify releasing it. And I think they did. And I think they did that. So I think, my hats go off to Sucker Punch for Ghost of Tsushima. I think they did a phenomenal job as well. I would agree with anyone here who says that those two games both deserved Game of the Year, in my opinion, from that sort of mainstream perspective. Even if they're not my favorite games this year, I still think they absolutely deserve, some sort of recognition there. Thank you so much, Alex. Oh, look at that. The animation has played a little zombie. I don't know why it's done that, but thank you so much for the £5, Alex. I appreciate that. It's gonna go a long way in keeping the channel alive. Thank you so much for that, my friend. Alex says, my game of the year was The Last of Us Part 2. I loved everything about it. There are a lot of really good games this year, though. Have a great Christmas. Thank you, Alex. You have a great Christmas as well. Yeah, I think, like I was saying before, Alex, I do really think The Last of Us Part 2 did, a lot of stuff very, very special. I think they did a lot of stuff great that a lot of games don't come even close to, in 2020 or in previous years. And I think, realistically, developers are going to have a hard time even getting close to what The Last of Us did, who aren't possibly first-party Sony titles going into 2021 or 2022 in the future. Just from a, from not only from a visual standpoint, but from a storytelling perspective, from a gameplay perspective. The Last of Us, I think, did get a little bit bloated in some parts, but I think, they did so much right. They really did so much right. I think one of the biggest challenges for those guys, Naughty Dog, was that they were competing with themselves. They had produced one of the best games of all time. That was Game of the Decade, the original Last of Us. They had a multiplayer mode that was reasonably innovative. They had a single player game that kind of came out of nowhere and told this story that really did knock people's socks off, and they needed to find a way to top that. It's never going to be an easy feat. And while I don't particularly think that the story in Last of Us Part 2 was as strong as the narrative in The Last of Us, the original, the Part 1, I still think they did a very admirable job at tackling, a follow-up to that. The interesting part is going to be seeing whether or not they decide to dive into that well again, and they go there again and they try and do something else. It's really going to be interesting to see what happens next for Last of Us Part 3, if that even exists, whether or not it will tell the story of these characters again, or whether it dives into something completely different. Maybe it's told from Abby's perspective, maybe it's told from Ellie's perspective. Who knows? We don't know anything yet. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to find out. I mean, it sounds like most people are sort of well within this Ghost of Tsushima Last of Us Part 2 camp. Highlights from 2020, other games that I think have kind of done stuff quite well. It's been a strange year for games because on the offset, I kind of thought it was a weaker year for gaming. But actually, upon reflection, it was a pretty strong year. We had a lot of really solid games come out this year. Some were predicted, some weren't predicted. Some of the massive games, like Avengers, for example, which was supposed to be massive, kind of just flopped. And Avengers, maybe people knew that was going to happen, maybe they didn't. But there's been quite a few surprises this year. I would say Crash Bandicoot 4 is another one that came out of nowhere this year, and I feel like Crash 4 is easily the best Crash Bandicoot game that was ever released. The best Crash game that they've ever released. And I think they definitely did some really unique stuff with that game. They innovated on that Crash formula. They changed things up. They told an interesting story. They brought Crash back in a really meaningful way in 2020. That's not just a remaster or a remake. And they've paved the way for more Crash Bandicoot content now going forward, which is great. I think Activision, when they bought the Crash franchise, maybe didn't know exactly what to do with it. They sat on it for a long time. They pumped out a bad bunch of games, and now they've got this, they've got this franchise that they've actually brought back from the dead, basically, to do something really unique and special with. I see a lot of you guys mentioning Fall Guys in the chat as well. Yeah, absolutely. I think Fall Guys needs a shout out. Fall Guys, Among Us as well, but obviously not on PlayStation. Fall Guys has done some crazy stuff this year that no one would have predicted. Fall Guys took players away from Fortnite, from Minecraft, and created this new battle royale multiplayer, massive multiplayer sort of mechanic that no one else has done. No one's done it like that. And I'm sure that over the next 12, 24 months, you're going to see a ton of these sort of obstacle course type clones like Fall Guys pop up from other indies and other developers who are trying to cash in on something like that. I'd be really curious to see whether or not AAA company, maybe a publisher like Ubisoft or EA or someone decides to take advantage of that formula and try and develop something really unique with that, or maybe just copy Fall Guys. But yeah, Fall Guys definitely gets a shout out as well. One of those really important games for 2020. And even when it came out, right? It came out at a perfect time when everyone was in quarantine, people were stuck at home. They released it for free on the PlayStation Store, and it took off just perfectly like that. Adam says, my game of the year was The Last of Us Part 2. I waited so long for it, blitzed it in a few days, and was that emotionally drained. I didn't play my PS4 for over a month, and we're still discussing it. 100% Adam, that's a fantastic way of expressing what I've tried to be saying this entire time. There are very few games that you put down at the end of it and you're just completely satisfied with. And whether or not you enjoyed the story or not, emotionally drained is a brilliant way of describing that. I think I can't honestly think of many games that have done that to me. There's very few in my lifetime that I've honestly completed and just been completely satisfied with the experience that I don't want to play video games anymore. It's absolutely happened. God of War is a brilliant example of something like that. After playing God of War, the PS4 version, which have ruined gaming for me, because I was like, you know what? This is perfect. Last of Us absolutely did that. Absolutely. That's a brilliant way of saying it, I didn't go back for the platinum in that game, for example. And that's normal for a AAA game. If I don't go back for the platinum, that means that I was satisfied leaving the game uncompleted on my trophy list because I was so content with my experience with the game. Oh, Mick's mentioning Tony Hawk as well. Tony Hawk was another really great remaster. It absolutely was. They ruined the trophy list, but it was a good remaster. Steven says, not my game of the year, but Marvel's Iron Man was incredibly fun to play. Nice, Steven. It's a unique take. Not many people would probably say that. So that has been episode 1 of the Platinum Trophy Show Online, our weekly online discussional, topical PlayStation gaming show, all about Game of the Year. We'll be back at the same time next week with next week's topic, which I would like you guys to help pick for me. The way I want to run this show each week is that we can talk about something that you guys want to discuss. Now, Michael had a fantastic question at the end here, being what new IPs would you like to see going into this generation of consoles? And I think, that's actually a really great topic for next week, is what new IPs would you like to see? But leave your thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. Let me know if you have any suggestions and recommendations for topics for next week and the week after, and we can kind of use those topics going forward. I'd like to try and get as much audience, feedback and audience participation as possible. This show isn't just going to be like a normal YouTube show that I post on YouTube like the Platinum Trophy Show is. I want this to be a truly unique online experience. That's really all there is to it, I think. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you're a new viewer of the channel, please don't forget to subscribe down below and like, and I'll see you guys on the next video.